Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, May 31st, the last day of May 2017. This is show number 1136. I am your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on this Wednesday evening. Unfortunately, our IRC babe Sly's a little under the weather. Actually, I think she's watching hockey. I think that's what she's doing. She's actually watching hockey. The Predators and the Penguins. Nashville Predators and Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm hoping Nashville wins because I used to live there, but I used to live in Pittsburgh too. I think because Nashville, I think, deserves it more. I don't care. Actually, either team wins. It's going to be good. But that's what Canada's doing tonight, watching hockey. But you guys are watching me if you were tuned in live to the Your Mac Life show. Thank you very much. Or if you're listening in by the archive, you ignore everything I just said. On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Next week is WWDC, and more importantly, the 6th annual Beard Bash. We'll talk to Jim about both of those things, what he expects from WWDC, and what we think we might hear from Apple on the keynote on Monday, which Apple will be streaming live. I think what we're going to do on Monday, schedule permitting, we'll join in up in the Slack room and watch the live stream of the WWDC keynote. Apple is going to be announcing hardware. What hardware, we don't know. Most likely a MacBook Pro. Rumor has it maybe an iPad Pro, although I don't think so. I don't think the iMacs will be announced at WWDC, the promised iMacs, nor the Mac Pros. Apple has said those aren't going to be announced until next year, although they will be updating them. Mo says it's never all that much hardware at WWDC. No, it's not. It's the exception rather than the rule at WWDC. We're also going to be talking about the new Essential phone from Andy Rubin, the founder of Android. And we'll get Jim's thoughts on the Essential phone, which, trust me, is not essential and will be a complete flop. If it's still being sold a year from now, I'll be very surprised. This is going to go the way of the Amazon phone. It's not going anywhere. And we'll talk about why that is later on in the show. We're also going to talk in our Starting Point Photography segment about how to hold your camera. I think I've talked about this before, but I got an email question from somebody who said that their photos are often blurry. And I think one of the reasons why is a lot of folks don't hold their camera correctly. And I'll try to show you guys how to better hold your camera for more stability. All that and much more hopefully coming up on tonight's show. Did you see this odd story of Google's breakdown? And this is just teasing our American friends. This is the Google breakdown of what Americans don't know how to spell state by state. I thought this was hilarious. It's also quite sad. The fact that the number one word, for example, the number one word that people in Wisconsin don't know how to spell is Wisconsin. Okay, that makes no sense, but fine. If that's the issue you guys are having, you should know how to spell your state's name. It's just my own personal opinion. But the funniest part about it was the fact that there were so many words that shouldn't have been hard to spell that apparently were. I mean, for example, how does Mississippi not know how to spell nanny? It's nanny. That seems like a fairly easy word to spell. It doesn't seem like that should be something that would be difficult for people to know how to spell. And to make matters worse, even the folks at Google got into it, because if you notice on their original map, they spelt the word 90 wrong. You see that? I think I can't tell what state that is, whether that might be Delaware, but they spelled 90 wrong. Google spelled 90 wrong. That's got to be embarrassing. Spell 90 wrong? It's 9T. Not that hard. Some of the words are difficult. I don't think any of the words, except maybe one, are insanely difficult. Like pneumonia. Yeah, pneumonia is a hard word to spell. But Hawaii, people. Idaho, quote. Kansas, diamond. Maryland, special. As I said, Mississippi, nanny. Montana, surprise. New Jersey, 12. Come on, people. Now, the only one that I can really see is Connecticut. Connecticut's apparently the word that these are words people most look up on Google to try to find out how to spell. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Okay, I'll give you that. That's a bitch to spell. Although if you sound it out, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, you can figure it out for the most part. The other thing is we don't know what age people who are looking these words up are. So, but some words, vacuum, I always put in 2 C's in vacuum. I'll give Idaho or Iowa that one, VACUUM. I almost always spell with a double C. What other words are difficult to spell? That really are difficult to spell. I think that's really it. All the rest of them you should be able to spell. Come on. And all this is in honor of the Scripps Spelling Bee, which I think is going to be on ESPN tomorrow night. I know the first round was today. And oh my God, the little 6-year-old girl that I posted on The Loop a couple of months ago made it. If you haven't seen this let me see if I can't find this on The Loop. At the time she was 5. She's headed to the National Spelling Bee. She's the youngest contestant ever, and she is painfully cute. Painfully cute. You got to see the video of this little 5-year-old girl, Edith Fuller. She is so sweet and so cute, and I'm really pulling for Edith. I think Edith should be. I'm dying. I'm hoping to see that she makes it on the ESPN feed for the Scripps Spelling Bee, because she is just such a little sweetie and very self-composed. Very, she seems to know where she is and what she's doing. It's not like this is a big scary surprise for her. She's very. I can't say well spoken, but she sure shit knows how to spell more than I do, and I'm a good speller. So I'm really hoping Edith Fuller, who's now 6, will be on the TV version of the National Spelling Bee. It's a shame that a lot of folks it's not something that's focused on or people really care about anymore. But I'll be the first one to say I judge people who are bad spellers. I really do. Do you? Are other people like that bad grammar and bad spelling in your mind makes you think that the person is not intelligent, that is not smart? If, and I get the occasional their and its and your mistakes, but if it's consistent throughout your writing, that makes me think that you're just not very smart. Not stupid, but just people don't seem to care. And is it because of computers? Is it because of spell checkers? And spell checkers are not perfect. I've had several instances where spell checkers didn't get words right. And maybe that's because I'm a grammar and spelling Nazi myself. I don't remember focusing on spelling when I was a kid, but I remember enjoying it. I liked figuring words out. And I don't think we have a spelling bee in Canada. I know I never participated in one when I was in middle school, but I certainly would have, because I enjoyed spelling. I enjoyed getting the words right. I still do. But I don't know if, I'm pretty sure we don't, or at least didn't have spelling bees here in Canada. Mosquito says, I washed out my 4th grade spelling bee with a simple 2-syllable word, mortifying. Well, mortifying is easy to spell. How could you wash it? And that's not 2 syllables. It's 3. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper desperately needs editors and spell checkers. It's the exception rather than the norm that I read an article from them that does not have a misspelled or omitted word in one or more sentences. That's awful for a newspaper, especially with the reputation of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Monty. And Wayne says, I graded university level papers written in text speak. Yeah, I didn't. Wayne says it isn't taught nor corrected in schools anymore, even universities. Is that true? Is spelling and grammar not taught anymore in schools? You folks with middle-aged school kids, is that true? Because that would be awful. My dad was the kind of guy who, when we were kids, wouldn't let us use a calculator until we showed we could do the work without one. So in other words, we could use a calculator to check our work. We couldn't use a calculator to do our work. Now, granted, that was, just basic math. That wasn't the formulas of algebra or things like that. But yeah, Dad wouldn't let us use, even though we had calculators at home, wouldn't let us use them to solve the problem. He would let us use them to check the problem. Sherry says here in Canada they started phasing it out when I was still in elementary school many years ago. Scott Thrift says it's frowned upon for teachers to correct spelling as it upsets the little darlings. That's just... How many of those kinds of things are going by the wayside? We've heard people talk often about the fact that most people's handwriting is atrocious. We're not taught handwriting. We're not taught how to write clearly because we have computers. I bet a lot of it comes out of that because of computers, we don't need spell checkers. Or we don't need to know how to spell because we have spell checkers. There's also an argument to be made that language is a natural living thing, and we should allow it to morph. So say in 50 years, it's all text speak. TXT, SPK. That's understandable, text speak, but Wayne says, bear in mind, Shawn, average reading level for adults in North America is grade 3. Please tell me that's not true. You know what? Now I think about it, you're probably right. Because I know when I was in high school, we had an English teacher who had us read in class Shakespeare, Macbeth in particular. And the other kids were awful readers, just awful, painful readers. Not just because it was Macbeth, which is a very odd way of reading aloud, but they just didn't know how to speak properly. And I loved it. I was a big old... I took the character of Macbeth and read, hopefully, wonderfully. Because I enjoyed that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a skill that we are losing and lacking here in... certainly in North America. I don't know about our European friends. I don't know if they are any better off when it comes to this kind of stuff. But it's a shame that we're losing that skill, if we can call it that. Later on in the show, in our starting point for topic segment, we're going to talk about how to hold your camera. There's a way of doing it properly, and obviously a way to do it improperly, and I'll try to show you the best way to hold your camera. The reason why is because camera shake is death to good photographs. It causes blur. Your camera moving causes blur, and your body moves naturally with your heartbeat and your breathing. And we'll talk about ways to minimize that as much as we can. But up next, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop about WWDC and what he expects to see next week. All that and much more coming up. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me. On our phone now, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I am good. Next week is the Worldwide Developer Conference. You will be in attendance, and like me, you will understand about 5% of what's spoken, won't you?
Well, in the keynote, I'll understand 90% of what's spoken, but outside of the keynote, I don't think it would be as high as 5, would it?
I was giving you the benefit of the doubt. It's kind of funny. Yeah. You sit around with those guys, you know, and you're at the chieftain or you're in the hall, and you either are involved in or listening to the conversation, and I'm sitting there like, I have no freaking clue what you guys are talking about.
That's why I drink.
Exactly. That's why I get them drunk, is because at least then they'll dumb it down and I'll be able to understand them.
I just nod.
It's nod knowingly.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you know, when you combine this class with this function, and then the init goes crazy. Yeah, exactly.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I'm going to come up with a fix for that tomorrow.
So here, hold my beer. I'm going to come up with a fix for that. Yeah, it is a remarkable conference for that reason, for the fact that it literally completely ununderstandable to me in any way, shape, or form. It's just, and that's one of the reasons why I don't go anymore, because there's no point. I'm just a waste of money because I don't have a clue what they're talking about.
Well, there are some good things in there, though.
Yes.
Some things that, I mean, for developers, there's a ton of good things.
Sure.
The whole
absolutely.
Week is a good thing. But, you know, there are some things in there that I get that, you know, good little tidbits to have. And so it's always a great week.
It was reported this week that Apple has filed in Europe and Asia that indicate new MacBooks, iPads, and an Apple Magic Keyboard are coming to WWDC. Do you put any credence into these rumors?
Well, I mean, they filed. They could come at any time.
Yep.
You know, are there things coming at WWDC? Sure. You know, don't know what it is, but now you just ruined that surprise for me. Thanks.
Do you think there'll be new hardware at WWDC?
Well, now I just might as well stay home, right?
No, you can't stay home. You've got a party to put on, brother.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do expect. I mean, to me, Gruber and I talked about this last week, that, you know, iPads seem to make sense for that market.
Yeah.
You know, Macs would certainly make sense for that market. I don't think that there'll be iPhones.
I think it's interesting you say iPads. I think new MacBook Pros make the most amount of sense. You think that an iPad might be announced next week?
Well, it's been a while for an iPad.
Yeah.
And that would certainly make sense.
Sure.
There's no reason that an iPad wouldn't be a good thing at WWDC.
Yeah.
Certainly the MacBooks, no iPhone. Definitely all the software, you know, TV, watch, Mac, and iOS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're definitely going to hear about that, the software. Now, whether we get the full range, we don't know yet, but I got to assume, talk about Mac OS 10, I guess 13 will be the next version, and possibly the next version of, and likely the next version of iPhone software. I don't know about Apple TV or about Watch OS, whether those will be mentioned or updated or given.
Oh, I think so.
You think? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Just because, I mean, remember last year, that's where they laid out, you know, the future of Apple TV was there. I think we'll probably also see in the software realm, we'll see some new Apple Music stuff, because this seems to be the event that they do it at. So yeah.
When you say new Apple Music stuff, are you talking about the business side of it or the software side of it? New software.
I think software side. Yeah. Because they introduced it at WWDC, then they did updates to it last year at WWDC.
Yep.
So I would expect the same this year.
I think sadly we're gonna see some sort of carpool karaoke thing.
Yeah, well,
You like that stuff, though.
I'm sure that we'll see that. Well, some of them are pretty funny. I will admit, some of those carpool karaoke is very funny. I'm not sure that Apple will be able to pull it off the same way that James Corden did.
Agreed.
He did a great job. What I don't want to see is Apple go in and screw it up.
Yeah, I think the problem is that Corden is the anchor to that thing.
Right,
if it's funny, it's because of him. And if he's not there, I think it'll be less funny more of the time than with him.
Well, some of the things that we saw, I think it was Shaq and John, that wrestler guy that's on
John Cena.
John, I think he's funny as hell.
Yeah.
But the two of them in a little tiny car, a little clown car, that was funny. I mean, that was pretty funny. I would like to see them. That would be a good episode. So, I give them credit for that. I'm not sure I want to hear either one of those guys sing, but that whole thing looked pretty good.
The big rumor that is gaining steam is that of a Siri speaker. Supposedly, it's already in production, according to Bloomberg. It will be announced at next week's WWDC. Does that make sense for WWDC? I'm not saying that it will or won't be announced, but it doesn't seem to make sense for WWDC, does it?
Well, any product makes sense for WWDC because then they can tell the developers how to code to it.
Yeah.
So anything that they introduce makes sense at WWDC. I mean, they could drive the car out on stage, and that would make sense for WWDC. So, there's nothing I don't think. Now, if you say we're having an iPhone event, would it make sense that there's going to be a Mac there? Nah, not really. Yeah. That kind of stuff. But when you're talking WWDC, I mean, this is the foundation of the company right here.
Yeah.
So whatever they're going to introduce makes sense.
Now, one of the things I heard was interesting with this Siri speaker rumor, that it would be screenless. Now, we heard Phil Schiller talk last month about how he thought devices without screens were a little bit silly and useless. So I hold less. I think that aspect of the rumor holds less water than the fact that we'll see a Siri speaker next week.
Well, and Steve Jobs said he'd never make an iPad mini. So
if there's a stylist, they're doing it wrong. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Phil did say that, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know. I mean, how do you make one of these with a screen? I mean, do you really want to interact with a screen? I mean, yes, but really, I don't know. I don't have one of the other devices because I don't think that it would really help me. I don't know. But then again, I'm not sure that a Siri device would help me. Would it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the screen thing makes sense for the Amazon Echo because they're trying to sell you stuff. And to sell you stuff, you need to look at it quite often. I don't know that a screen makes a lot of sense for an Apple Siri device, which doesn't need, in theory, the visuals of it. It just needs a good set of speakers.
Well, and, what is the Siri device actually going to do? Is it going to control things? Is it going to do everything? Is it going to answer questions for you? Is it going to turn on music on your Apple TV, or does it play music through this device? I don't know. I honestly, because I don't use one, I don't know what I want it to do.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem with me is that if you say a Siri device, well, okay, I think I asked Siri, when is the next hockey game on? But that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't really ask it a whole lot more, but we talked before, well, is that because, it can't do much more, or I don't know.
A lot of folks forget that Apple has made a speaker in the past, and it was, in my mind, an utter flop. So I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope for any new version of it, especially because anything that Apple brings out is going to be compared favorably and or unfavorably with the Amazon Echo, which has been out for, a year and a half, 2 years now, and is, from all reviews, a pretty good device if you use it for what it's meant to be used. And Apple's going to be compared to that, and they're going to have to surpass it because the price is going to surpass it. It's not going to be a cheap device, whatever Apple announces. It's going to be in the realm of $300 to $400. It better do a hell of a lot more than the Amazon Echo does, and I don't know what else that might be.
Well, I think, Apple's thing will be that you can set appointments with it and your iCloud, and you can do all of these things using the Apple ecosystem. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's enough. Yeah. I want to be able to sit back and ask Siri some questions while I'm watching TV, or, I don't have the computer and the phone is down, and, hey Siri, what's the temperature in Berlin, or whatever.
But for me, and I'm sure you're like me, and maybe we're the outliers here, and therefore we shouldn't be talking about this. My phone is never more than arm's reach away from me. So if I want to ask Siri a question, I can always just pick my phone up and say, hey Siri, what's the temperature in Berlin? I don't need a speaker that's always on and always listening. Not that it's reporting to Apple or anything else like that. So yeah, I personally don't see the value in this stuff. Other people do, but I personally don't.
Sometimes I fall down. It's true. It happens.
I know. Arcsign makes an interesting comment in the IRC chat room. He says, Shawn, a Siri speaker now makes as much sense as an Apple glasses made when... Sorry, start over. A Siri speaker makes as much sense now as Apple glasses made sense when Google Glass was shipping. It's not a product segment that will exist very long. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, he could very well be right in that it's not going to exist in its current form for very long. I think that, this whole automation thing, if that's part of what Siri is for, and I would imagine this would be part of it all, that is going to exist and grow. Yeah. So I get that whole point. There is one big difference between this and Google Glass. This segment seems to be selling a lot better than what Google Glass did.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, people that had Google Glass were getting beat up on the street.
Yes. And rightfully so.
There are regular, normal people that have these types of AI assistants in their house that, people that I know that I wouldn't have thought would have one. Yeah. And they do. Not the shopping one, but, just the one that you can ask questions and play music and stuff like that. And, one of the features that always impressed me that Amazon had is that you could say, whatever, Alexa, play that song that goes, all aboard, and, and it would know the song and play it. I thought that was pretty cool. Why can't Siri? I'm going to try that with Siri after I get off the call.
It's funny. Monty says, my iPhone just answered Jim and Shawn's "What's the temperature in Berlin?" question.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. The most important thing that's going on at WWDC isn't the keynote on Monday or the classrooms. It's the Free Beard Bash, 2017. Is it the 6th annual Beard Bash on June 5th?
7th or even 8th. 2009 was the first one.
Was the first one? Yeah.
So
I was at the first one. I never got invited back, which is kind of strange.
Yeah. Well, you should take that as how
it's a sign, is it?
Yeah.
Are there still tickets available for those folks who are going to WWDC?
Yes, there are a few tickets available. Still, yeah.
Now, this is one of the interesting things is, and this is something I never did at my even at my Macworld Expo parties. It's an all ages party, so although you serve booze, if you're 17, you can still get a ticket.
You can.
No, good for you. I wouldn't do that. Screw them.
Well, you would only invite girls too. So.
Well, yeah, duh. Because otherwise, it's a complete sausage fest. Are you kidding me? Where's the location?
The National Civic Center in San Jose.
Have you been to the location yet? Have you scouted it out?
Oh yeah, of course.
What's that area like around there? We've heard a lot of folks talking about the difference of this WWDC being in San Jose versus San Francisco. San Francisco, obviously a big world city. San Jose is a little small townish, very corporate, very sterile. I'm not a big fan of San Jose. What's
No, no, I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think maybe before I would have agreed with you, but I don't think so now. I mean, there's bars down there. Well, the Civic Center is right across the street from WWDC.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I mean, they can leave the party and just go camp out Tuesday morning for their classes if they want, because it's right across the street.
So the area around WWDC is fairly well developed. There's restaurants and bars and that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
I always think of San Jose as just being just not a very interesting town. Just there's not a lot.
No. They've really done a lot of work in San Jose. I like it.
Sponsoring the party is iMore, Playmart.com, MacPaw, and Pixelmator. Speaking of Pixelmator, they did something that was really annoying yesterday. Pixelmator team teases a brand new Mac app. I hate when companies do this. I hate when the media reports on this stuff. Do you mind this stuff? Do you mind these teases?
Normally, I'll be honest. Normally, I don't pay attention to them.
Yeah.
But I have been reporting on Pixelmator since before they released Pixelmator.
Yeah.
I have reported on them for however many years that is, and that's a lot of years. I was still at Macworld then.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of faith in these guys.
So do I. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Pixelmator for their products.
No, when they tease something and say, now they've been working on this for 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
So imagine how many iterations that app has gone through to get it to the point where they're happy with. Yeah, I'm excited by what they do.
So am I, but I just don't like the tease. It's the tease part.
You're a curmudgeon, though.
Well, yeah, this is true.
I'm not. I'm a happy person.
Speaking of curmudgeons, Walt Mossberg has announced and printed his very last column over there at Recode. Were you a Mossberg fan, personally or professionally?
I don't know if I was a fan. I respected Walt's opinion.
Yeah.
I think he had his last column. I thought he had some good insights. Yep. From where we came from to where we could be going. And there were times I disagreed with Walt.
Yeah.
I didn't think that his criticisms or whatever were warranted. I didn't agree with his outlook on where things were going, but Walt is Walt. He can write that. I can write mine. But and not everybody agrees with me either. They're wrong, and I'm right. But
I think the interesting thing about Walt Mossberg is that how much the criticism of him it felt like it was based on jealousy. Walt had a lot of access. He'd been around for a very, very long time, knew a lot of people, and had a lot of access. The problem is that kind of access also requires at times the person in question to do things that maybe they wouldn't do if they were on the outside looking in. It's always been a problem, always going to be a problem. It's called access journalism. Always going to be a problem with a lot of people. But I don't believe the criticism that, for example, that Walt was soft on Apple because he was, I don't think they were friends, but because he was so well known by and with Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. I don't think that's a legitimate complaint, but it certainly is a complaint people did have of Walt.
Sure. But, I mean, people say that I'm too pro-Apple.
Yep.
And, I don't know what those people want me to say. Yeah. But, I've been very honest my whole career about how I felt about Apple. There are a lot of things that Apple is doing that I think is just so good. And, I was there, with things that weren't so good.
Yep.
And, even times when people were were praising Apple. I didn't. And there are times that people criticized Apple, and I didn't. So, I'm on both sides, and the access that Apple gives me doesn't guarantee them that I'm going to write a nice story.
Yep.
It guarantees that they get a chance to show me this stuff, and I'm form an opinion on what I think. So, that's all that I can do.
Mosquito in the Irish chat room says people who say this stuff about Jim or Gruber or others prefer to ignore when both those guys take Apple to the shed about something. That's true.
Right.
It's very selective viewing of what people say about these things. And Arcsign says, Shawn, I don't believe access depends on becoming a yes man. No, it absolutely doesn't.
No, absolutely not. And I have never had Apple once say anything to me about an article that was fairly done.
Mm-hmm.
There are articles that I've written that that they've taken issue with factually.
Yep.
They may say, what you wrote here, try this because what you said is not actually the way it is.
Yep.
And I will go in and correct it and say, you know what, I screwed up. Yeah, this does work. I made a mistake or whatever. So if you're willing to do that, then, and they're willing to take their lumps when it's warranted. And I think that's fair. I can't ask any more from them as a company, and they can't ask any more from me as a journalist to say, here it is, here's what we think. You form your opinion, and you can write what you want.
I think part of the problem is that there are so few of those people that we can trust unconditionally nowadays. Even if you disagreed with Walt Mossberg, I would challenge anyone to honestly question his integrity when it comes to this kind of stuff.
You can't question Walt's integrity.
Yeah.
And I would say the same about one of his longtime writing partners, Kara Swisher.
Yep. Although Kara is a bit touchy. She's blocked me because I challenged her on some stuff, and it was like, oh, come on, don't be a whiny, you know what?
Well, Kara is tough.
Oh yeah, she is.
She is tough, and I would never challenge her integrity as a writer, because I think she's straight up.
Yep.
So, there are a lot of people like that. And not just, big name people like that, but there are a lot of people in even our little industry like that where, when the reviews come out, these are the people that I read.
That's right. Yeah.
So, because I trust them, and their opinions may completely differ from mine.
Sure.
And that's okay. That's okay. And a lot of it depends on how you work with one of these products. Depending on what it is, you may expect more from it than what I do.
Yep.
Well, that's okay. Some of the tests that people do on these things, I never even thought of doing because that's not how I do it.
Yeah, I don't care enough. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Moving on, also announced this past week, possibly the not strangest, but in 2017, this is the product that I will say is the most likely to fail. Android creator Andy Rubin makes a new smartphone. Now, first of all, the title. It's called The Essential. Oh my God, you pompous twit.
Yeah.
Right from the get-go, you've already turned me off of your device. Not that there was any chance of me ever using this thing. But will The Essential be a success in your mind?
I don't think so. I mean, okay, so Andy Rubin, who, originally stole the BlackBerry OS and made it Android, then saw iOS and decided to steal that and make it Android. And now he comes out with a phone that looks suspiciously like an iPhone.
No.
Or a Galaxy or, whatever it is. But he has to compete with Apple and Samsung?
Yep.
No. And I think he will probably have to compete with Samsung more than with Apple. Because I doubt that there's many iPhone users that would give up their iPhone for an Essential. So he's going to be looking at mostly trying to take share away from Samsung, and I just can't see that happening. I really can't.
Well, even if he doesn't have the distribution channel for this. He's only going to be selling it on the website for the first little while. He's got no carrier network for this or carrier sales for this. This thing, by its nature of its sales channel, cannot possibly be a success. It doesn't matter whether it's a good phone or not a good phone or a good OS or not a good OS. He just cannot sell, unless he's expecting to only sell, say, 10,000 a year, if he's happy with that. But this thing cannot scale because he does not have the dealer channel in order to make this thing a success. My problem with a lot of the reporting on this, as very much like the Pixelmator story we talked about earlier, was the utter lack of any kind of critical thinking from the vast majority of the mainstream tech press. For example, every picture you saw 2 days ago was from the Essential. They were all mock-ups. This thing doesn't exist in real life yet, and there's no price point for it. It won't be on sale for sometime in the next month or so, according to Rubin himself. This right now is vaporware. No one's seen it. No one's reviewed it. No one's gotten their hands on it.
Yeah.
But it goes to, I think, the tech press itself. The tech press should have, in their fawning coverage over this thing, with the tech press is always looking for the latest, greatest, shiniest thing without ever looking at it critically. The first thing everyone should have said was, this thing has a very slim chance of success. Because it does.
Well, I love The Verge's headline, exclusive.
Yeah.
No, it's not an exclusive. It was on their website. I mean, that's not an exclusive.
Yes, it's exclusive to TheVerge.com, but everybody had the goddamn story because the thing had been put out in non-disclosure a week or 2 weeks before. Even I got an invite for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Verge saying they had an exclusive, which is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
You've got to look at a lot of the stuff with just gigantic truckloads of salt. Don't let the tech media blow smoke up your ass talking about these things as if it is in fact the latest and greatest. Give some thought to it and read some of this stuff and realize, hey, this thing ain't going nowhere.
Yeah. Well,
it has no chance.
I don't think so, and we'll see. We'll see if he can get some carriers on board and see what deals he can bring up. Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, he still has to take on either Apple or Samsung or both. That's and right. He can't do that. He just can't. LG can't do it. Sony can't do it. Motorola can't do it. There is no way that he is going to be.
Even if he had the carrier channel, there is no way that he's going to be able to convince huge numbers of people, either iPhone users or Android users, to give up what they already own in favor of this completely unknown operating system, if nothing else.
Yeah. Not happening.
I mean, there's no app store for it, so I won't have any apps. All the apps I want to use better be already pre-installed on the Essential, and don't get me started about the frickin' name. Jesus Christ.
Well, but it's a variation of Android, right? So
yeah.
So apps are going to be easy.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's going to be.
I mean, to be honest, they'll be full of malware, but they'll be easy to get.
Exactly. There was an interesting story I posted on the Loop last week. The Mark Newsom hourglass for Hodinkee.
I love that.
You know what? I wrote that, and this is what I said on the Loop. I said, you start off thinking, well, this is stupid, just an hourglass. You read more, and you think, kind of cool design, though. Then you get to the price and think there are 100 people out there with more money than sense.
Yeah.
I still stand by that, but I'm less snarky about it now.
$12,000 for an hourglass. But if I had $12,000, I'd buy one.
Why?
I mean, if I had $12, I'd put it towards one.
Put it on layaway, like our moms used to do.
Hey, Mark, can I get this on Sears layaway?
For me, it was Zeller's. My mom put everything on Zeller's layaway.
Yeah.
Okay, why? I'm going to give you $12,000. Why would you buy this?
Well, I would need millions of dollars in order to get just flop away 12 grand. But I thought the precision and everything that he did. I mean, that's something that not everybody is going to have.
Yes.
You know, I thought it was beautiful. I really did.
I agree. And as I watched the video on the website, one of the things that struck me was the attention, not only to detail, but also the attention to what this has to be. Blowing glass is not easy. Blowing glass to the tolerances required of this thing. Remember, this is a timepiece. It has to be exact. That hole where the ball bearings slide through has to be the exact right size in order for the ball bearings to go through for the exact amount of time that's required. And that, to me, is just incredible.
Right. I mean, I could do it, but not everybody could.
Have you ever even been in a glass blowing factory?
Actually, I have in Venice, so yeah, piss off.
And Venice, that's a very cool place to do it too, because they're very well known for their glass blowing. It is a remarkable piece of art, and that's what got me thinking about it. Was that I stopped thinking of it as just an hourglass that you flip over every 10 minutes or half hour, whatever it is. But it's a piece of glass art, a limited edition piece of art. And once I started thinking about it in those terms, then I realized, well, maybe $12,000 isn't that much money for that class of people. There's no way I would ever pay that kind of money for it. If I had Bill Gates money, yeah, I probably would. But for the average person, no. But we can't just sneer at this just because of the price. We have to look at it for what it is, and for what it is a remarkable piece of art.
Yeah, it is.
If you ever get a chance,
and it makes noise. Did you hear the noise it makes?
It makes a really cool little clinky noise.
I get addicted to that noise.
I love the idea of it. I love the idea of what he's trying to accomplish here. I think it's part of our culture nowadays, where we look down our nose at smart people, at well-spoken people, at rich people, at things that have value to them, and we try to lower everyone to our middle America levels. And I think it's wrong in a lot of cases. In this case, I definitely wish I hadn't been as snarky as I was on the original Loop post.
Well, remember that for next time.
Yeah, I will. Marksign says it's an unremarkable piece of art. See, I got to disagree with you on that one, Marksign. I think it's a very remarkable piece of art.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
I watched the video. I went through. I saw the price. I choked. Took another bite of my 99-cent craft dinner and moved on.
You posted a story up on the Loop. People selling their cars in favor of Uber and Lyft. That's got to be mostly in urban areas, right? I mean, obviously, that's not something that suburban folks can do.
Well, no. Clearly, no.
But
I mean, for urban people, a lot of them always took taxis anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I mean, for those people, it does make a lot of sense, except for the fact that the Uber drivers are getting creepier by the day.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm going through the story and trying to see if there was any sort of breakdown of the age group of people, because it seems to me that quote unquote younger people are more younger urban are more likely to do this than us old farts who've grown up with cars our entire lives, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think.
I think part of it is the car culture that we grew up in. When we were young, and I'm sure for a lot of other people, you couldn't wait to hit the age of 16 so you could get your driver's license, because your driver's license meant freedom. It meant you could go where you wanted to, when you wanted to. You didn't have to have your parents dropping you off and picking you up all the time, right?
But that's for us living in suburbia. I mean, for the kids that grow up in New York, they don't need that. They would take the train, you know? And now, I mean, millions of them still do take the trains in places like New York, even San Francisco with BART and Muni and all of that, Caltrain. You know, there are all kinds of people that, if they do have a car, it's for the weekend to go, you know, to the grocery store. They don't even need that really, because they just walk.
Yeah.
But all of the cities, or most of them in Silicon Valley, are, you know, close enough to each different downtown area where you can shop, you can eat, you can party, you can, you know, you have entertainment. And usually on non-peak times, Uber or Lyft, it's like less than $10.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you know, sometimes to go downtown where I am, it's like $5.
Yeah.
You know, it's down the street, but it's too far to walk, you know.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, especially carrying 24 Heineken with you. So.
You can get a Lyft driver to pick you up under the bridge?
Oh, hell yeah. A Lyft driver picked me up. Well, actually, they don't necessarily pick me up. They're stopped in traffic and I jump in. So, you know. I guess it depends on how you look at it.
I've never experienced that. We don't have Uber or Lyft here in Vancouver, and I don't live anywhere near where they would be. But we do have the car to go and the Zip cars and Moto and those kinds of vehicles for hire on the hourly or 4-hour basis, which is a little different from Uber and Lyft. Because Uber and Lyft are basically cheap taxi cabs, right? That's the easiest way to describe it.
Well, I don't know that they're cheap, but it's more convenient because they're there for you. Yeah. So at one time in San Francisco, my son and I got out of a concert on Van Ness, and just before we left, I called an Uber. We went outside, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people there outside the venue.
Yeah.
And we moved up the sidewalk a little bit, and the Uber driver pulled up, and he knew who he was looking for because my picture's on the account. I knew from the license plate who I was looking for, and we just hopped in and left. It wasn't like, you know, you're one of hundreds waiting outside for a cab. You know, it wasn't like that. So it's a lot better. So we hopped in back to the hotel, and it was all great.
Yeah, I remember trying to get a cab outside the Javits Center during Macworld Expos in New York, and that was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
I would have killed to have Uber back then because, you were either waiting for an hour just for a cab to show up, or you were walking 4 miles back up to Times Square in order to find a cab.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not the way it is now. And typically, the time that you wait for an Uber is about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So even when it's busy, you can do an Uber. Now, they're surge pricing.
Yeah.
So it can be 1.5 times the price or 2 times the regular price. But you're at an event. Yeah, bring me an Uber.
You're paying for the convenience,
I need to get back to the bridge. I can't stand all these people.
But you did point out, rightly so, in the story that people are selling their cars in favor of Uber and Lyft. You and I are the same in that regard, that we like driving. I enjoy. I don't like being in rush hour traffic, but I love the act of driving a vehicle, whether it be a car or a motorcycle. So I would never do this, but it'd be interesting to see how many people in our audience, if you had access to Uber and Lyft, would you sell your car? People forget that their cars are sitting idle for the most part 16 hours out of every day, doing nothing, just sitting there, just depreciating, giving you no value except for the convenience of being able to walk outside your door and jump into a car. But as Jim says, you can do that with Uber and Lyft in a lot of places. Walk outside your door and there's a car waiting for you.
You're kind of a downer, Debbie, tonight, aren't you?
What? No, I'm saying this is a good thing.
God.
I'm saying for a lot of folks, the problem is for those folks.
Your car just sits out there depreciating, and now you're depressing everybody.
But it's true. A lot of folks don't realize that I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next 10, 15 years as more people realize, at least, again, in urban areas, not in the suburbs or in small towns, realize that they don't need a car. How is this going to affect Detroit and the auto industry and the kind of cars and vehicles they're going to be trying to sell us over the next 10 years?
Well, I mean, they're getting into, shares in Lyft and Uber.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing.
I think we're going to see a lot more. I think we'll see a Ford fleet of Uber and a GM fleet of Ubers and a lot more of those kinds of things. But Ford is still going to have to make cars for those folks who live in small towns and who live in the suburbs. So they're going to be having to make cars for both kinds of people. Folks, I've been talking to Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's here each and every week. Next week, if you're at WWDC, go see the Beer Bash. They've got a great band playing. The beer and wine is free, and you'll be able to say hi to Jim. Thanks very much, Jim, for being here. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Shawn.
Have fun at WWDC. See ya.
Thanks.
Bye. Yeah, let me know. What do you guys think? Is this something you would do? Would you, if assuming that you had Uber and Lyft available to you, would you sell your car? I don't have a car. I have a motorcycle. I wouldn't sell my motorcycle even if I did have Uber and Lyft available to me because my motorcycle serves a different purpose than a car that gets you from A to B. There's a huge difference there. But if you're an average everyday commuter, there was a couple times last week when I had to go into Vancouver during rush hour. And oh my God, that was awful. How people can do that every day, twice a day, just boggles my mind. How you can sit in that traffic. It's not even stop and go, it's stop and stop. My left hand, which holds the clutch, was a claw. I'm doing 10 miles an hour for 20 miles. It's just awful. But when it's not rush hour, it's a blast. And I said, I love the act of driving. I love maneuvering a vehicle through space at speed. So I would never give up a vehicle voluntarily in favor of Uber and Lyft and those sorts of things. Now, there are some downside, obviously. I don't drink when I go out anymore because I'm on a motorcycle. So that's a bit of a downside, not a huge issue, but it's a minor issue. You want to have a beer with friends, but I can't because I don't have friends. But what do you guys think? Is this something that you would do? Send me an email to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Let me know what you think. And for folks like, well, I guess Logan is in the IRC chat room. He may be too young for this, but was I right in saying that turning 16 and getting a car was a big deal for a lot of us? Our age group, younger, older, whatever group you're in. To me, it was a huge deal. It meant freedom. It meant I was becoming an adult. That I was allowed to do this thing that adults were allowed to do. It meant I could go places that my parents either wouldn't take me or couldn't take me. And it meant I could get away from things. I don't know that kids nowadays, 12, 13, 14 years old, at least in the city, are looking forward to getting their license the way we were when we were kids. I'm sure suburban kids probably still feel that way because that in the suburbs, that car is still means freedom for you. It's going to be interesting to see how that, like I said, with Jim, how that's all going to play itself out. In our starting point photography segment, I got an email from Paul, one of my meetup group members, who said that all my photos are blurry. Do I need to get a better camera? And I'm going to talk to Paul about this the next time I see him at one of the meetups. But one of the things that I've always found when beginners ask me about what causes the blur, a lot of folks want to look at the technical aspects of it. You need a better camera. You need a better lens. You need to increase your ISO. You need to do all these things. But about 75% of the time, when I'm face-to-face with somebody, and they say, all my photos are blurry, I say, show me how you take a picture. And frequently, the way they take a picture is, for lack of a better, wrong. They hold their camera wrong. Any camera movement can introduce blur in your photos, and blur is the death of most photographs. Anytime this lens moves around, you're going to get blurry shots. And blurry shots means it's not going to look good. It's just the way it is for the vast majority of photography. So what you need to do is a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about tripods. What you need to do is make your body a tripod. And one of the ways you do this, and if you've ever taken a shooting class, you'll recognize a lot of these tips and tricks are the same for shooting a rifle or a handgun as shooting with a camera. Now, one of the things I always do, and this stuff becomes easier the more you practice it, the more you work at it. I try always to have, for me, because I don't know if I'm right-footed or whatever it is, my foot that's the furthest away from my subject, I'll have parallel to my subject. So my subject is there, my foot is facing this way. So my left shoulder is kind of pointing towards, or 45 degrees towards the subject. And my left foot is pointed directly at the subject. So I've got a kind of a letter L of my body. So that's me starting to make a tripod of my body. The next thing you do is you see people, especially with iPhones, they'll have their elbows out. And your elbows out don't make a stable platform. Or you'll see people with using the view screen on the back of their DSLRs having the camera out here. And again, your elbows are out and not making a stable platform. So you want to tuck your elbows in as tightly to your sides of your body or to the front of your body as you can in order to make this whole thing stiffer. Next thing you want to do is I see a lot of photographers holding their camera basically one-handed and then using their other hand, usually their left, over top of the lens to zoom in and zoom out or to focus. Well, doing that, you can see as I'm doing it, the camera is moving. As I'm moving the zoom ring in and out, I'm also moving the camera. So what you want to do is, with your elbows tucked in, hold your camera in your right hand, and then with your left hand, instead of putting it over top of the lens, put it under the body of the lens and almost have the camera resting in one hand with your other hand at the shooting controls. So now I've got two hands supporting the camera with one hand supporting it from underneath. I can still move the focus ring back and forth. I can still do that easily. It takes a little bit of practice, but you can still do it from this position. So your offhand should be under the camera lens, not over top of the camera body. The next thing is, don't look through the viewfinder unless you absolutely have to. The viewfinder, first of all, is what uses up the vast majority of battery on your camera. If you use the viewfinder for all your shots, you'll get about a third fewer shutter pushes out of that battery than you would if you used the optical viewfinder on top. The LCD screen in the back uses up the vast majority of your battery life, so use it as little as possible. You want to, again, support the camera from underneath, but then when you put the optical viewfinder to your eye, actually have it touching your head. You don't have to look back here at it, but get your eye right into the optical viewfinder spot, because that will press it up against your head. And now, with my elbows tucked in and my hands underneath the camera and the camera against my eye, I've made a tripod. My body is now the tripod, and I can move in the horizontal plane back and forth without having to worry about the camera bumping up and down. So you physically have to tighten up everything. Your position, your arms, your upper body, your hands, and the camera to your head in order to prevent that kind of blur. It can be a little uncomfortable to begin with because it feels kind of weird to have your elbows tucked in, especially if you're a girl and you've got boobs. So you have to work around the girls. But with practice, you'll find it becomes much easier to do. And all this is stuff without using a tripod, obviously. This is all talking about using this stuff handheld. And one of the reasons why this is important is depending on the focal length of your lens or how much zoom your lens has, if you're zoomed in all the way in, the camera, when it moves, doesn't move a whole lot. But as you zoom out, the more you zoom towards the subject, the more that camera shake, a little bit of shake here at the body becomes a lot of shake at the other end. If you've ever had the opportunity to use a big zoom lens, like a 100 to 400 zoom lens, you'll look through the lens and you'll see a little bit of movement. But when you zoom in, that little bit of movement feels like it's jumping up and down. Same thing happens with telescopes. It's the exact same effect on a telescope. That when the telescope isn't zoomed at all, it's easy to look through. But when you zoom things in, or binoculars is another example, when you zoom in closer, then that little bit of movement on one end becomes a huge movement on the other that you have to watch out for. So creating that tripod with your body, with everything tightened up, helps a lot when it comes to reducing camera blur as much as possible. The other thing that's very common from a stabilization point of view, and this is what people who are pistol shooters also know, is just before you push the shutter button, you breathe out. So as I'm getting ready to take the shot, I breathe in, and as the shot becomes ready to be taken, and I take the picture. The breathing out sort of silences the movement of your body. It helps you to become more stable and more steady. Just a simple breathe out, breathing in, and then gently breathing out. And at the end of the breathing out, or in the middle of the breathing out, you can push the shutter button. The other thing you can do too is just lean up against something, against a wall or a tree, or put your elbows on a fence. Anything that holds your body steady is going to help with that kind of stuff. Sitting down helps too. Even if you have to sit on the ground with your elbows on your thighs or on your knees, that helps stabilize your body too. You have to keep in mind that everything you do movement-wise moves the camera. And when the camera moves, that introduces blur. So you've got to do everything you possibly can to reduce blur. The best thing is obviously put it on a tripod, but that's not always available to you, or not always a good situation. You don't want to be carrying a tripod around, the park or the fairgrounds. So learn how to do those tricks. Learn how to hold your body steady to take the pictures, and I'd be willing to bet that a lot of your shots will come out much, much better now. Scott Thrift says, interesting question. If anyone knows, possibly Shawn, what was the resolution of actual film negatives? And ArcSign points out analog didn't really have resolution numbers. So I think that might be a Google question. I don't know. I never shot film, so I have no idea what the resolution of film would. It would be very high because film had a lot of quality to it. So I'd be willing to bet it's probably in the upwards of the 50s. For film resolution. Tom Seneca. What's the best digital camera for a teenager? Well, any camera is good for anybody. Depends on their abilities. If the teenager is a responsible teenager, and they want a DSLR. As I've always said, the Canon Rebel line or the Nikon D3300 line are really, really good. If that's an older teenager. For younger kids, tweens, I've always highly recommended the Olympus Tough Line. I love the Olympus Tough Line. I'm just going to pull this up on the website. The Olympus Stylus Tough TG5 is their latest version of this thing. And these are really good, tough cameras. Their image quality is okay. It's not fantastic. It's obviously not as good as a DSLR, but it's pretty good for a point and shoot. But the thing about them is that if they are given to a kid who is a little hard on the camera, they'll drop it or put it in water. This is the camera that's great for that kind of kid. It's shockproof to 7 feet, so you can drop it from 7 feet in the air and it's fine. Waterproof to 50 feet. Freeze-proof to, I think, -5 degrees Celsius. What else is it? They've got decent resolution. They've got decent optical zoom on them. Like I said, they take decent pictures. And they're not that expensive. They're generally under $400 on Amazon or Autorama or B&H. So if that's the kind of kid you were looking to get a camera for, one who wants to take it to skiing or to the beach or to adverse conditions, that's a really good camera to get for a kid. Does Canon make a better DSLR than Nikon? Yes. No. Maybe. Sometimes. Depends. You can't make a blanket statement that Canon makes a better camera than Nikon or the reverse. They both make incredibly good cameras, DSLRs. Some are better in some situations than others. Some are better with certain aspects than others. For example, the new Nikon D5S blows the Canons away for sport shooting. I know Canon sport shooters have sold all their gear to buy a Nikon 5D. 5DS? 5D. And in 6 months, 18 months, whenever Canon comes out with a better sport shooting camera, they'll sell all their Nikon gear and buy the latest Canon. For portrait shots, portrait photographers, it's probably 50-50, Canon versus Nikon. For landscape and wildlife photographers, probably mostly Canon, if only because Canon has, in theory, bigger, better zoom, big, giant 600mm zoom lenses. But as a blanket statement, there's no such thing as Canon is better than Nikon or Nikon is better than Canon. Gil Anderson, is editing your photographs considered cheating? No. They're your photographs. You can do whatever you want with them. You want to take a picture of the Eiffel Tower and put it in monkeys? Go ahead. It's not cheating. If you think of photographs as art, as your art, you can do whatever you want with them. It's only cheating when you misrepresent the image. So if you take a photograph and of the Eiffel Tower and put monkeys on it and then tell people, look, I saw monkeys in the Eiffel Tower, that's cheating. If you are, the other aspect of it that's definitely cheating is if you're a news photographer, if you're a photojournalist, and you add or remove or alter the image in a way that misrepresents reality, that's cheating. But otherwise, it doesn't matter. It's not cheating at all. Again, it's your photo. It makes no difference at all what you do with the photo. I'm going to pull this one up. The question, I'm new to photography. After I take a picture on my D3400, my D3400, my screen turns on and shows my info. F-stop, ISO, screen. How do I disable this? It's easy. Read your manual. All that information is in the manual. You got to read the manual for your cameras. Even though the manual sucks and is written in poor English, read the manual. That'll tell you what your camera can and can't do. Scott Thrift says, cheating would be what they do in fashion magazines when they completely manipulate the images so far away from reality. That's not cheating. How Scott, explain how you think that's cheating. That's fashion. That's art. That is editing. I don't think it's cheating. Interested to hear why you think that is. Photoshopping models look physically different, Shawn. Again, how is that? It's manipulation. Is it cheating? I can see where you're going with this. And I guess in one definition of it is cheating. Are they misrepresenting? Do people not recognize that those photos are photoshopped, are edited, are manipulated? Maybe they don't, maybe they do. There was a big stink many years ago when TV Guide put a picture of Oprah Winfrey on the cover, but used her head in a different body. That's cheating. That's obviously cheating. But if they slim a model down or put makeup on a model, is makeup on a model cheating? Is doing her hair cheating? It's a fine line for sure. Scott says, in the production of unrealistic images, I have no problem with editing, but removing any reality produces unrealistic images. Well, producing unrealistic images doesn't mean it's cheating. Unless, again, you're misrepresenting what those images are. It's an interesting point. Jason Painter in Sydney, Australia says, decades ago I had a hot new camera, the Minolta X700. I was on Port Phillip Island, Victoria, Australia, and taking what I thought were amazing shots. There was another young guy there with a big, cheap, clunky, ugly manual Zenith SLR. He appeared to be doing a real photographer's job, using his equipment as a tool, not a status symbol. I sneered at this guy. After 2 to 3 hours, the trip was done. I discovered I had not threaded the film properly, so I had no photos. I was the tool. That was Jason talking about his newbie photography mistakes. Oops. That's got to be awful. Thinking, especially when you're looking at other people and mocking them and you screw up. That's good. That's got to hurt. Scott is in our IRC chat room. He sends an email also from Sydney, Australia. I had an experience this week that has highlighted an issue regarding Apple's staff not knowing the basics of a consumer law and how it applies to Apple. The screen of my original Apple Watch decided to detach itself. That's not uncommon either. Steve in the Slack chat room had the same thing happen. After getting over the shock, I called Apple Care and spoke to a great rep there who agreed the problem was with the watch as opposed to something I had done, and that even though my watch was outside the Apple 1-year warranty, I was covered by Australia's consumer law protections. In Australia, this states that goods that suffer a catastrophic failure and are rendered unfit for purposes entitle the owner to a replacement or refund for a reasonable time, even after the manufacturer's warranty has expired. So, 2 hours and several buses later, I was waiting patiently in the Sydney Apple store, and the genius informed me that I would have to pay for a repair and have the watch sent away, despite the extensive notes left by the phone rep earlier in the day. At that point, I asked to speak with a manager, and the minute I mentioned consumer law, the watch was replaced on the spot with a brand new Series 1. I realize that it's not possible for every member of the staff to be a lawyer, but shouldn't it be Apple's responsibility, not the consumers, to train their staff on the basics of what Apple's legal responsibilities are in a particular market where they do business? Yes, absolutely. I agree with you on that. That the staff should know what laws in this regard apply to their products. That being said, when in doubt, you never get mad at the staff member. You never yell and scream and rant. You simply quietly and insistently ask to speak to the manager. Because even if the staff doesn't know, maybe they didn't get that training yet, the manager should know. And as you mentioned, if there were notes in your file that the staff can see, then definitely speaking to the manager was a good course of action and obviously got you the satisfaction that you wanted. I'm glad it worked out for you. Scott says, on a lighter note, in last week's show, you were talking about the difference between terms for things in Canada and the USA. Okay, hang on. I got to set this one up. Hang on. Open with, come on, just open and preview. Come on. Scott says, a case of beer in Australia is a slab. Frozen sugar water in a tube is a super duper. Milk is just milk. And we have a delightful brand of cheese. Well, you know what? I don't know, Scott, if I would exactly call this brand of cheese delightful. I think you know why, what you did when you sent this to me, folks. There's apparently a kind of cheese, a brand of cheese in Australia with the name is called coon cheese. No. Coon cheese. For those of you who may not understand why that is so incredibly offensive and incredibly funny, is coon is a pejorative slang term for a black person in America. So basically, this is N-word cheese. That's not right. That's not right. Oh my God. That's not right, Scott. That's funny as hell though. Coon cheese. Oh dear. All right, Mo is leaving, and now that Mo's leaving, the rest of the evening is shot. So I'm out of here too. Folks, I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Don't forget, next week is WWDC. It's going to be interesting to see what Apple announces at the keynote on next Monday. Hopefully you'll tune in. The keynote will be streaming live, so you'll be able to watch it on your home or work internet connection. Probably work internet connection for a lot of you. Also, I want to say thanks very much to you guys for being tuned into the show, as always, each and every week, whether we're listening in via the archive or listening in live. Don't forget, you can always subscribe to Your Mac Life by going to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com. Right there on the left-hand side, you can subscribe for $2, $5, $10, $15 a month, and that money goes directly to me and helps pay for my rents. I lost a gig today. The folks at techpinions.com no longer need my editing prowess. And so I need to make more money faster. So if you've ever thought about subscribing to Your Mac Life, I'd appreciate it if you did it soon. Also, don't forget, I do my photography classes. Learn to take better images with whatever camera you have, and learn how to use that fancy DSLR. Both those classes are available to listeners of Your Mac Life for $75 a piece. They take about 2.5 hours. And as Wayne says in the IRC chat room, he says, for anyone who's remotely interested in photography or knows anyone who is, I highly recommend Shawn's course. My folks, his parents, found him very informative and approachable. So please contact me if you'd like to do a on-demand photography class. We do it over the internet. We do it over Google Hangouts. We do it anytime that you would like. You choose the time, and I set things up on my end. Please, if you've been interested in photography and want to learn more, I can help you out. So send me an email to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!